G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Off Ukraine update for the 29th of November 2025. Today's headlines. Well, first up, Putin has branded claims that Moscow is planning an attack on Europe is ridiculous. Another deadly drone attack on Kyiv. Following a search of his home by anticorruption investigators, Zelensky's top aide has resigned. I've warned long ago about this man and his sneaky behaviour and my speculation about his involvement in the corruption scandal. And lastly, despite significant gains by Russia, the Institute for the Study of War believes Ukraine's frontlines are not, I repeat, not in danger of imminent collapse. Those be weasel words. But first, the map. Ukraine's interactive map is the well, as you can see for yourself, it's sparsely populated today. There's no news to say why there's a lot of the fighting, but you know the situation in Ukraine. The weather is bleak. There's been lots of fog. The daily temperatures have been lower than expected, lower than average. Sorry, not just lower than average, but lower than expected. So, and of course, as you see, there's very little daylight. It's, I believe that the weather is only going to get worse as we move into December. Probably January, may see a Russian offensive. We don't know for certain. But as you can see, Kyiv was not the only target, but there were lots of areas hit. Now, as per Ukrainian policy, and many Western media complies for access, of course, it's why they're often called the access media, is they do not report on any military targets or personnel killed. And that would also extend to Ukrainian government buildings, particularly when there are 20-odd secret organizations spread out through Ukraine. Don't forget, there's CIA, there is the Mossad, and many other intelligence organizations with their own little hubs and hidey holes. Russia has claimed to have identified some of them. We'll never know if that's true. But the way Putin laughs, you know he got the targets hit that he wanted. And if you underestimate Russia's reach, remember, they knew before anybody, they knew about Tucker's application to the CIA. People do talk. There are lots of Americans who, once upon a time, used to admire Russia. Boney. Alright, so one of the targets hit is Russia's favourite, Kharkiv. They really do not like Kharkiv. Or Dnipro. Well, Dnipro sort of can understand. It's Chesney. This central Dnipro, all the way, right? Dnipro River, from ports in Kyiv all the way down, carry water, not just water. Sorry, carry the waterway carries cargo. It's like their second railway in many respects. But of course, Kyiv also has a robust air defense system, allegedly, that had only fired off some sparklers and some noisemakers. They really dropped the ball today, allegedly, because nobody dares put out a video that puts Kyiv in a bad light from the West. So you only get Telegram rumors from various bloggers inside Ukraine that raise questions as a means of telling us that the IRST and even the Patriots are either out of ammunition or not performing as expected. However, there is also the possibility that out of 160-something drones and missiles, a handful of missiles were allegedly fired at Kyiv, though there's no evidence of that. But let's say it was 168, although the numbers do vary from news site to news site. A lot of them didn't make it, so that would suggest, obviously, the half a dozen that did make it were those who got through. So you can't. I try to bring you the best news I can, but right now, between the various news organizations, they can't make up their mind anymore. They don't know what they can and can't report anymore because the situation in Ukraine is breaking down, and they need explanations. They need to be able to say, well, people are going to ask and constantly ask why they haven't explained the missile in Konst. They've explained. No, there's Russia, it seems. Although it is believed to be in Donetsk. Largest non-nuclear explosion since World War One. The largest explosion in the world was during World War One. The largest non-nuclear explosion, I should say. It used to be the largest explosion, then became the largest non-nuclear explosion. Now, I'm not saying the one at Kursk officially is the largest explosion, but suggestions have been made that it's the largest non-nuclear explosion since World War One. For those who don't know, during World War One, in an effort to end the war, a group of Australians tunnelled under the front lines, under the German hill on the French, on the border, on the front lines. One of the largest collections of fortresses. And in the days and weeks leading up to it, they almost got caught, almost found out, and they detonated a huge ammonia bomb. Basically stockpile of ammonia and dynamite under, blowing the hill. And after 18 weeks, I believe 18 weeks later, the Germans retook the position, thus returning the situation back to a stalemate, and then came the tank that broke. Now, a lot of people are comparing this privately to World War One, where we have a growing stalemate. Yes, Russia can make a few advances now and again. According to the Institute of War, however, it is heading towards a stalemate. However, they said imminent collapse. Why is a qualifier there? Well, one, if it does collapse, they say, well, we didn't say immediate. And two, obviously, they do think it will collapse, just not now. Now, here's an interesting thought I had. All these millions with Ukraine in their bio, had they gone to Ukraine to support Ukraine, whether as volunteer workers or soldiers, Ukraine wouldn't have a shortage of manpower now, would they? But, liberals, it's called virtue signalling, not for a reason. Now, there isn't much fighting, and there's been, of course, a little breakthrough. The Russians have expanded their front lines here, a little bit here, but they are stuck in other areas. But as you can see, if we look at Seversk, you can see we've taken a chunk of the southern outskirts, the Seversk. Unlike many Ukrainian towns, Seversk is all the town, not just the center of town, which means it's a not one of the conglomerate, but this was once a major area, like Lyman. Lyman, of course, as you can see, is a huge conglomerate now. That's Lyman, and then you've got all these areas and forestry and that. This was Ukrainian industry. There's a rail hub. She actually terminates there, which is weird because you think it would go all the way to Seversk. It would have been extended, and yeah. But we never know the whole truth. We are only giving you a slight picture, but for most of the front, there is nothing. No, I'm not saying that pot shots haven't been made, but I think the Russian offensive has taken its toll due to the weather, and I'm not saying that there's a freeze in fighting because of peace talks, but I am suggesting that there are those who will see it that way, but mostly it is simply because men and machines have reached their breaking point. They had made a huge breakthrough here in the West, and now they have to consolidate their positions and bring up their supply lines and air defenses. So, in order to buy time, Russia launched drones and missiles. Over half all these markers here, they're old. But here's something. This is new. These markers, alright. Apparently Russian tankers have caught fire. So Ukraine has hit a couple of Russian tankers headed for Sochi, or headed from Sochi. Now, Putin is after meeting with Viktor Orban in Hungary. Putin, let me get the name. What's the name? What's the name of that town again? Looking here. Oh yeah, Kazakhstan's capital, Bishkek. Sorry. Hey, it's Kyrgyzstan, everybody. Now, come on, have a laugh. Now, he attended a summit of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. This was post-Soviet Union's answer to NATO, a collective security trade organization that later formed the model for BRICS. However, it is separate from BRICS. Now, this is a Russian-led military alliance of former Soviet republics. And in a speech he gave, he branded claims that Moscow's plan to attack Europe is ridiculous, that they never intended to do it. But if they want to hear from us, we'll document it, no question. Despite criticism from European leaders who claims he repeatedly denied Russia would invade Ukraine before doing so, they are putting things slightly out of context. He always said he never intended to invade Ukraine, and all he wanted was for Ukraine to honour the Minsk II Accords. He gave them an ultimatum. Zelenskyy called his bluff and then said after a week that Putin was weak because he didn't invade. And then when Putin made a build-up on the border, he again called his bluff. I don't care who you are. I do not believe that just saying Russian aggression makes you right. I think you lack context and sophistication, that you are merely boiling things down to the lowest common denominator so that you don't have to deal with complex issues, such as your gullibility. Many people are gullible, and however, it's a matter of admitting. Have they made a mistake and just admitted to it and signed a peace agreement and began dismantling the Azov Battalion and instituting the rest of the Minsk Accords, there would be peace long ago. Now, Putin is ready to discuss a serious end to the war, but they will fight on if Ukraine does not withdraw troops from the front lines. Ukraine, however, says such a withdrawal will leave the way open for a Russian assault on Kyiv. Again, the war of words, the war of bravado. The Ukrainian president is once again putting his pride in front on his sleeve and then saying, but I am the victim. I should get everything I want. That is victim mentality. You believe you're entitled. That is not how winners work. Winners don't go. Lions do not say, oh yes, I killed the antelope. I now owe the rest of the antelopes a day off. No, he eats his full, and if he's full, he says, I'll just see you tomorrow or the next day. The lion does not ask the antelope for permission to hunt. So you have to grow up and stop acting as if whining changes the world. Well, it does. It does not change the world for the better. Your whining just gets people to the point where they don't like you anymore. Now, Kyiv has come under deadly drone and missile attack. Russia, of course, has not specified what targets it hit. Neither side does this. Nobody really does it. Maybe America did it in a few conflicts, but most of the time you don't get to know. You don't get to know other than a glimpse into what's going on. And I try to bring you the best I can, but according to Russia, they've destroyed more than 100 Ukrainian drones. Of course, Russia never admits what went through and what did not go through. Now, again, there are claims that the battlefield situation has deteriorated. There is a fog over parts of Ukraine. Now, according to Ukraine, a short time ago, Russia has again launched 36 missiles and nearly 600 drones. Added that it's time for Europe to make its decision on Russian frozen assets and which will force them to end its drone and missile strikes, and saying that Europe has to unlock 164 billion in assistance to Ukraine by stealing it off the Russians. That there needs to be enough missile for our anti-pets and everything necessary for our protection. Our protection! The best protection in the world is not being antagonistic. And if someone is antagonistic, you meet them with... You don't ad hoc throw together a war. This is Europe's mistake, We're running the war on maybe ifs, buts, and other people doing the fighting. These ad hoc coalitions and throwing air defenses and bombing runs. Russia's adapted. You haven't. But despite everything, Steve Witkoff is still on his way to Moscow. Zelenskyy has not withdrawn from peace talks. Residents of Kyiv an hour ago, resumed their lives shortly after the latest missile and drone attack, returning to their normal lives as if nothing happened. Which means they're not afraid. Which means they know the missiles and drones aren't targeting them. They know they're targeting the Ukrainian government. And they're basically, that's why you see that central black area of Ukraine. That is the Ukrainian government. And the rest of Ukraine is just basically Kyiv probably blacks out a little bit, and from the sky you could say, oh look, target, bullseye, and black spot's the bullseye. And of course, in that bullseye area are probably the supply routes to the front lines. Normally, however, in a situation of wartime corruption, normally there's a big rug and everything goes under it, under secrecy. So one has to ask, who did Andrei Yermak piss off, or is he the fall guy? Now, I've long said he's suspicious. I mean, look at these two clowns acting as if they're all tough guys in the military. I bet he hasn't seen a Big Mac that he hasn't murdered. And Zelenskyy, he's still got that marching powder nose. But my theory is, when the three individuals named in the corruption scandal had met and were recorded, that Yermak was doing the recording and that he knew the corruption body was investigating them, so he did a recording and then released it to the Americans to try and buy his way out of the situation he finds himself in. It didn't work. Zelenskyy needs a fall guy, and that is always what's going to happen. Okay, you think the president of Ukraine is going to hand himself into the corruption investigators and admit his faults, failures, and dealings with Yermak? And no, the office of the president of Ukraine will be organised. The Guardian has said that Zelenskyy wants to move on from the corruption scandal. Yeah, don't they always? If this was Trump, you would never hear the end of it. It would be non-stop. He knew. He's a crook. He's another Nixon. You would never hear the end of smears, lies, and innuendo. As well as possible facts. I mean, let's face it, Zelenskyy must know something. But in a joint statement, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office said the searches were authorised and linked to an unspecific investigation. Earlier this month, in sweeping investigations, there was an alleged $100 million kickback scheme in the state atomic energy company between senior officials and the ex-business partner of Zelenskyy. Everything circles the drain back to Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy's key allies, his friends, people who helped get him elected, former film producer and lawyer Yermak came into politics with Zelenskyy as his chief of staff. He's long known to be the one who organised the speeches and the whole production in order to get Zelenskyy elected president. This was a $1 billion production. You're telling me people spent huge money on Zelenskyy and then none of them said, what's our return on investment? Come on. Often, Yermak has been called the vice president. He was at Geneva for peace talks. He's the one who dismissed Ukraine's position many times, saying that, no, we're not going to give up land. Well, does he look like he gives up anything? But the corruption investigation into Ergotom continues. This is half the state's electricity. This is half of Ukraine's electricity. That the chief suspect, Timur Mindik, a one-time business partner of Zelenskyy, is the mastermind. Of course, we need the fall guy, but then we need two fall guys, because there has to be the bribe and the bribed. Now, Mindik has left the country, probably because they wanted to terminate any possibility that it would come back on Zelenskyy without prejudice. It's just business. But terminate, Yermak probably Probably that's why Yemek was there, recording the information to get so that he could go over it and hopefully make sure that that they had their story straight. That they would take the fall, go to jail for a few years, and disappear. Like how much money do they ever really recover in these corruption cases? Or we'll get you on this case, but we'll close the books on everything else. You don't think Ukraine, a country that's complained constantly, been constantly rated the most corrupt nation in Europe for 130 years or something, you don't think that Ukrainians, after multiple revolutions, multiple purges, and only to basically become the most corrupt state in the Soviet Union, now is back to being the most corrupt state in Europe. I mean, Ukraine, I'm sorry if you can't catch a break, but you bring this on yourself because you won't work with others and you won't be honest with others. Transparency. You keep getting told. Transparency, transparency, transparency. All these operations in secret. All this, but we don't want the Russians to know. Really? If the Russians want to know something, they find out. Okay? They find a way. Most of the time, it's just paranoia. Now, there's a bit of increased activity on the map, not by much. But yeah. It is a sad situation. Sumy and Kharkiv and Kyiv will be, again, without power. It is cold, and 100 million would have provided a lot of Ukrainians with winter clothing and adequate food. Hopefully, the people who claim that they love Ukraine, they support Ukraine, even though they knew nothing about Ukraine until 5 minutes after the war broke out, that they're suddenly experts on Ukraine and don't even know that Ukraine's security guarantees were from China. And where's China in all this? Hear no evil, see no evil, buy lots of Russian oil. Where's India in all this? Hear no evil, see no evil, send thousands of Indian workers to Ukraine, amidst the conflict, by the way, and then claim to be neutral in all this while they sell arms and ammunition to both sides. Oh, and buy Russian oil. So, the moral of the story is, there is no morals. And that's a sad fact. The first casualty of war is the truth. Then, innocence. Reality is harsh. And people who embrace comfortable lies and delusions are setting themselves up for a hard fall. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.